Welcome to Silent Queen's Reckoning. I'm so glad you could join us today. Now let's dive right into the story.
Chapter 1. The diamond necklace around the mistress's throat cost $12 million. It arrived at the charity gala in a black velvet box, carried by a Cartier security director, presented under chandeliers, and fastened in front of 200 guests by Adrian Vale himself. His wife, Evelyn Vale, watched from 10 steps away with a champagne glass in her hand and no expression on her face. The room stopped breathing for the kind of scandal that rich people pretended not to enjoy. Adrian was tall, silver-eyed, and beautiful in the ruthless way billionaires became beautiful after enough people depended on their mood. He wore a black tuxedo and the easy smile of a man who had never been forced to explain why he wanted something. Beside him stood Camille Laurent, his new foundation director, in a scarlet satin dress with bare shoulders and golden hair swept over one side of her neck. The necklace settled against Camille's skin like a declaration. Adrian adjusted the clasp himself. Camille touched the largest stone and looked directly at Evelyn. "Isn't it breathtaking?" she asked. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were not. They were bright with the thrill of public theft, the special arrogance of a woman who had mistaken another woman's silence for defeat. Evelyn lifted her glass slightly. "Very." A few guests looked away. Others leaned closer without moving. Phones stayed discreetly low, but not absent. Wealth did not kill gossip. It only taught gossip to wear diamonds. Adrian turned, finally acknowledging his wife. His smile did not reach his eyes. "Camille secured the Children's Hospital pledge," he said. "She deserves recognition." Evelyn looked at the necklace. $12 million worth? Camille laughed softly. "You know Adrian. He is generous with people who make him proud." The words slid through the air and found their target. Evelyn had been married to Adrian for 9 years. She had stood beside him through hostile takeovers, federal inquiries, labor strikes, investor panics, and one brutal year when Vale International was close enough to collapse that Adrian stopped sleeping and started breaking glasses in the study. She had made the calls that saved him then. She had negotiated with creditors under a holding company he never bothered to understand. She had given him the calm face that made markets believe the Vale name was stable. Adrian had never bought her diamonds at a gala. He had once said she did not need ornaments because she already looked expensive. At the time, she had foolishly taken it as a compliment. Now she watched Camille glow beneath the chandelier and understood it had been an excuse. Adrian leaned close enough that only Evelyn could hear him. "Do not make a scene." Evelyn looked at him. "Have I ever?" Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, perhaps. Or unease. Men like Adrian enjoyed a quiet wife until the quiet started sounding like a locked door. Before he could answer, Camille took his arm. "The auction is starting. Adrian promised to introduce me to Senator Whitcomb." Adrian did not remove her hand. Evelyn noticed. So did everyone else. Across the ballroom, the foundation chairwoman stared at the trio with carefully concealed horror. Adrian's mother, Celeste Vale, stood near the floral arch with her pearl necklace and pinched mouth, pretending not to see the mistress wearing a fortune that should have caused shame in any family with working mirrors. But Celeste did see. She simply approved. For years, Celeste had tolerated Evelyn the way old money tolerated excellent weather, useful, pleasant, and not worthy of gratitude. Evelyn had not come from a famous family. At least, that was what the Valles believed. She had entered their world as a brilliant mergers attorney from a quiet Boston firm, wearing simple suits and no visible pedigree. Celeste never forgave Adrian for marrying someone who arrived with credentials instead of a surname. Now Camille had both beauty and neediness, which Celeste mistook for femininity. Adrian walked away with Camille. Evelyn remained beside the champagne tower. Her best friend, Julia Mercer, appeared at her shoulder. Julia was a forensic accountant with dark curls, sharp eyes, and the patience of a woman who could follow a stolen dollar through 6 shell companies without raising her voice. "Please tell me that was a foundation jewel," Julia said. Evelyn watched Camille lean toward the senator, necklace blazing. "No. Personal account? Worse." Julia looked at her. "How much worse?" "He used the Marseille acquisition reserve." Julia's expression changed. "The restricted reserve?" Evelyn nodded once. Julia swore under her breath with admirable restraint. "For a necklace? For leverage? Over Camille?" Evelyn's mouth curved faintly. "Over me." Julia followed Adrian's gaze across the room. He was not watching Camille now. He was watching Evelyn, waiting to see whether she would break. There it was. The necklace was not a gift. It was a public test. Adrian had grown tired of Evelyn's refusal to fight like a discarded woman. He wanted tears, rage, a slap, a scene his lawyers could later call instability. He wanted the board to see an emotional wife instead of a strategic threat. Evelyn took one slow sip of champagne. Then she put the glass down. "Call Rowan," she said. Julia's eyes sharpened. "Tonight? Tonight. Are we moving from review to sale?" Evelyn looked across the ballroom. Camille laughed at something Adrian said. Her fingers rested on the diamond necklace as if it had crowned her. Adrian lifted his glass toward Evelyn, a private toast to his own cruelty. Evelyn smiled back. "Yes," she said. "If he wants to spend acquisition money on jewelry, he no longer needs an empire to acquire." Chapter 2 Vale International had not always belonged to Adrian Vale. It had belonged first to his grandfather, then to his father, then to a family trust held together by expensive lawyers and old resentment. By the time Adrian took control at 35, the company was large, glamorous, and sick inside. It owned hotels, ports, logistics hubs, media stakes, luxury real estate, and debt so carefully hidden that analysts mistook the balance sheet for strength. Adrian made the empire look powerful. Evelyn made it solvent. She had done it quietly because she loved him then. That was the part no one wanted to believe later. People preferred betrayed women to confess they had always known, as if pain became less humiliating when rewritten as strategy. But Evelyn had loved Adrian Vale with an embarrassing sincerity. She had loved him when he called from Singapore at 3 a.m. because a lender threatened to pull a credit line. She had loved him when he held her in a hotel bathroom after his father's funeral and whispered that he was terrified he would ruin everything. She had loved him enough to lend him her mind before he learned to call her intelligence cold. 7 years earlier, Vale International had needed $2 billion to survive a credit squeeze. Banks wanted control. Private equity wanted blood. Adrian wanted a miracle. Evelyn brought him Northstar Meridian. It was a private consortium run by a man named Rowan Pierce, officially based in London, backed by family offices that valued discretion over headlines. Northstar provided rescue financing, restructured Vale debt, and purchased convertible instruments that could become controlling equity if Adrian violated certain covenants. Adrian signed because he had no choice. He did not read the final beneficial ownership schedule carefully. Men who believed themselves destined rarely read footnotes. If he had, he would have seen a trust called Larkspur Holdings. If he had looked deeper, he would have found Evelyn. Her late father had built Larkspur from shipping insurance, distressed ports, and an instinct for buying assets from men too proud to admit they needed rescue. Evelyn had inherited it at 29 and buried it beneath layers of privacy, so deep that even Celeste Vale believed her daughter-in-law had done well for a working girl. Evelyn did not hide her wealth because she was ashamed. She hid it because loud money attracted men who wanted either rescue or conquest, and Adrian already had enough appetite for both. For years, Northstar's position remained dormant. Adrian operated Vale International. Evelyn monitored risks. Rowan Pierce sent quarterly reports to her encrypted account. The empire survived. Then Adrian became bored with gratitude. It started with small cruelties. A missed dinner. A joke about Evelyn's serious face. A complaint that she spoke like an attorney, even at breakfast. Then came the late nights with Camille, the foundation meetings that ran until midnight, the overseas trips with separate hotel rooms Evelyn was expected not to question. Camille Laurent entered Vale International like perfume spilled on silk. She was 28, French-American, trained in art philanthropy, and beautiful enough that rooms forgave her before she spoke. She called Adrian brilliant in a way Evelyn never did because Evelyn had known him before the performance. She asked questions that let him explain himself. She widened her eyes at his stories. She touched his sleeve when laughing. Adrian began smiling at his phone again. Not because of Evelyn. The affair became obvious 6 months before the gala, though Adrian still called it gossip. Camille moved from foundation consultant to executive director. Her salary tripled. A company apartment appeared near the river. Her travel expenses multiplied. Celeste started inviting her to family lunches and telling Evelyn that some women had a natural gift for warmth. Evelyn documented everything. Not because she planned revenge at first, because documentation was how she stayed sane. The morning after the gala, Evelyn woke at 5 in the apartment she still shared with Adrian on the top floor of Vale Tower. He had not come home. That was almost considerate. It gave her time to drink coffee, review the jewel purchase trail, and read the message Rowan Pierce had sent at 2:17 a.m. Rowan, The restricted reserve transfer is confirmed. If Adrian authorized it for personal benefit, covenant breach is clean. Are you certain you want to trigger? Evelyn looked out at Manhattan washed pale by dawn. She thought of the necklace. Not the diamonds themselves. Diamonds did not offend her. Men had been buying stones to excuse failures of character for centuries. What offended her was the source. The Marseille Acquisition Reserve had been created to complete a strategic purchase of a European port operator. Thousands of workers, lenders, and shareholders depended on that transaction. Adrian had pulled 12 million from it to decorate his mistress in front of his wife and donors. He had not only betrayed her, he had endangered the company and assumed she would protect it, because she always had. Evelyn typed back, "Trigger preliminary review. Prepare sale options." Rowan replied within 1 minute. "Understood. Quiet or visible?" Evelyn remembered Adrian's toast. Visible. Chapter 3. Adrian returned at 8:15 with the expression of a man prepared to be forgiven. Evelyn sat at the breakfast table in a white blouse and charcoal trousers, her laptop open, a pot of tea untouched. The city glittered behind her through the glass wall. She looked as calm as a signature. Adrian removed his cufflinks and dropped them into a silver tray. "You left early," he said. The necklace had already made its point. He smiled faintly. "Do not be dramatic. I was precise." He poured coffee, then leaned against the counter. "Camille worked hard. The donation she secured is good for the foundation and the company." "So you paid her with acquisition funds?" His hand paused around the cup. Only for a second. Then he recovered. It was a temporary internal allocation. "Finance will rebalance it." "Against what category?" "Evelyn." "No, tell me. European port expansion? Donor relations? Executive compensation? Emotional damages for women who flatter you?" His eyes cooled. "There she is." "Who?" "The woman who cannot speak without making a courtroom out of a kitchen." Evelyn closed the laptop halfway. "You made the kitchen less interesting than the evidence." Adrian laughed, but there was irritation under it. "You are angry because of Camille. Camille is not interesting enough to explain $12 million. Careful." She looked at him. "With what?" He set the cup down. "You have enjoyed this life for 9 years. The apartment, the jets, the estate, the access. Do not act as if you are above the empire now that the marriage is inconvenient." For a moment, Evelyn simply stared at him. There were insults so ignorant they became almost useful. They told a woman exactly how little of her labor had ever been seen. "You believe I enjoyed your empire," she said. "You certainly did not build one of your own." The sentence sat between them. Adrian's face showed satisfaction before he hid it. He thought he had finally found the vulnerable place. The quiet wife with no public fortune. The attorney who married into the Vale name. The woman whose elegance depended, in his mind, on his last name. Evelyn felt something inside her close with a soft, permanent click. "Where were you last night?" she asked. His expression sharpened. "Do not change the subject." "At Camille's apartment?" "I said do not." "In the room the company pays for?" He moved toward the table. "I do not owe you a schedule." "No. You owe the board one." Adrian leaned over her chair, close enough that his cologne reached her. "You will not go to the board." Evelyn looked up. "Why not?" "Because they know you are my wife, not an operator." That was the second mistake. The first had been buying the necklace. "And if I disagree?" she asked. His voice softened in the way it did when he wanted to sound reasonable while tightening a noose. "Then I will ask the board to remove you from any advisory access. I will inform them that our separation has affected your judgment. I will make sure every investor understands that you are acting emotionally." "Separation? We both know this marriage is dead." "Interesting. It was alive enough for you to ask me to review the Marseille acquisition documents last week. That was business. So was the necklace." Adrian's mouth tightened. Evelyn stood, forcing him to step back. "I have a foundation meeting at noon," she said. "With Camille?" "No, with your auditors." For the first time, his face changed fully. "What did you do?" Evelyn picked up her coat from the chair. "I read the footnotes." He grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise. Hard enough to remind her he was used to being obeyed. She looked down at his hand, then back at his face. "Let go." Adrian held on for 1 second too long. Then he released her. Evelyn smoothed her sleeve. "You should call finance," she said. "They may have questions." She walked out before he could answer. Behind her, Adrian's phone began to ring. Chapter 4. Camille Laurent spent the morning, after the gala, admiring photographs of herself. The best one had already made 3 society accounts. Adrian fastening the necklace behind her neck. Camille laughing. Evelyn in the background, half-shadowed, holding champagne like a woman watching someone steal flowers from her own grave. Camille zoomed in on Evelyn's face and smiled. Notaires. That disappointed her. Camille preferred victory with visible damage. She had spent years learning how powerful men replaced wives. First in private, then in photographs, then in houses, then in wills. Adrian had promised he was different. He said Evelyn was dignified, cold, and practical. He said she would accept a settlement if offered enough. He said she understood the difference between marriage and partnership. Camille did not understand why that made her uneasy. Her phone rang. Celeste Givalli. Camille sat straighter in the company apartment's cream sofa. Good morning, Celeste. Good morning, darling. Are you resting? Camille touched the diamond necklace lying open on the velvet tray before her. Trying to. Last night was overwhelming. You handled yourself beautifully. Evelyn looked as though she swallowed glass. Camille smiled. She was very composed. Composition is what women use when they have no softness left. Camille liked Celeste most when she was cruel in complete sentences. Adrian seemed pleased, Camille said. Adrian has been suffocating for years. Evelyn is efficient, but efficiency is not a wife. A man like my son needs admiration. Camille lowered her eyes, though Celeste could not see it. I admire him very much. Good. Then be patient today. There may be some noise about the necklace. Evelyn understands finance too well for her own good. Camille's fingers paused over the largest diamond. Noise. Nothing you need to fear. Adrian will handle it. That was what everyone kept telling her. Adrian would handle it. Adrian handled banks, ministers, boards, reporters, ex-partners, and women who became inconvenient. His confidence was part of his seduction. It made the world feel organized around him. Still, Camille looked at the necklace and wondered why a gift would create noise. After Celeste hung up, Camille opened her messages with Adrian. He had not replied since midnight. She typed, "Is everything okay?" No answer. She tried again 10 minutes later. "Should I come to the office?" This time a reply came. "Stay where you are." Camille stared at the words. They did not sound like romance. At Vale Tower, Adrian was discovering that romance had become the least of his problems. His CFO, Martin Kessler, stood in Adrian's office with 3 deputies, all looking as if they would rather be questioned by tax authorities. The general counsel sat near the window, pale and furious. A printed notice lay on Adrian's desk. Notice of Covenant Breach Inquiry. Issued by Northstar Meridian Consortium. Triggered by unauthorized movement of restricted acquisition reserve funds. Adrian read the notice once. Then again. "This is absurd," he said. Martin Kessler adjusted his glasses. The transfer was flagged because the Marseille Reserve requires dual certification for movement outside acquisition expenses. Then certify it. I cannot retroactively certify a jewelry purchase as a port acquisition. Adrian looked at him so sharply that one deputy lowered her eyes. General counsel cleared his throat. Northstar is requesting preservation of all communications related to the transfer, the Cartier purchase, and Ms. Lawrence compensation or benefits. Northstar requests many things. Under the rescue financing agreement, they are entitled to them. Adrian threw the notice onto the desk. Northstar does not run my company. Martin's voice was careful. If a material breach is confirmed, their convertible instruments can activate. Depending on valuation and debt adjustment, they could gain effective control. Adrian stared at him. The room seemed to tilt. That clause was theoretical, Adrian said. General counsel did not answer. Adrian's jaw flexed. Where is Evelyn? No one spoke. He looked at Martin. Where is my wife? Martin hesitated. Mrs. Vale has a meeting downstairs with outside counsel. Whose counsel? Another silence. This one was worse. Adrian turned toward the window. Far below, the city continued to obey gravity and money. For the first time in years, he felt neither working in his favor. Chapter 5. Evelyn met Rowan Pierce in conference room 32, a room Adrian rarely used because it had no view impressive enough for his taste. Rowan was 45, tall, dark-haired, and unfashionably calm. He wore a navy suit, no pocket square, and the expression of a man who had spent 20 years buying assets from people who confused glamour with leverage. He had known Evelyn since she was 26 and grieving her father while learning to command lawyers twice her age. He stood when she entered. You look composed, he said. That is what everyone keeps accusing me of. A useful crime. She sat across from him. Julia Mercer joined them with a laptop, followed by 2 North Star attorneys and an M&A banker from Halden Reed. On the screen was a structure chart of Vail International. Adrian's empire looked less romantic when reduced to debt, voting rights, pledged assets, and breached triggers. Rowan gestured toward the screen. We have 3 paths. Walk me through them. First, cure demand. Adrian returns the funds, agrees to governance oversight, and remains CEO under restrictions. Julia snorted softly. Rowan's mouth twitched. I included it for completeness. Evelyn looked at the structure chart. Second, conversion. North Star activates the breach rights, converts debt to equity, takes effective control, and removes Adrian. Messy but direct. And third, prearranged sale. We use the breach to accelerate board pressure and sell the core assets to a strategic buyer before Adrian can strip value. Ports, logistics, hotel management, and media holdings separated. Existing shareholders receive cleaner value. Adrian loses control entirely. Evelyn leaned back. Who is the buyer? Rowan clicked the remote. Name, Hawthorne Global Infrastructure. CEO, Malcolm Reyes. Terms, premium offer conditioned on governance reset, debt settlement, and removal of conflicted executives. Evelyn knew Malcolm. Everyone in infrastructure knew Malcolm. He was not sentimental, but he paid fairly for assets he wanted and had the patience to let proud sellers exhaust themselves. How long has he been interested? She asked. Rowan looked at her. 3 years. She turned slightly. You did not tell me. You were still trying to save Adrian from himself. The words landed without judgment. Evelyn accepted them because they were true. Julia pushed a file toward her. There is another issue. Evelyn opened it. Camille's benefits. Apartment. Car service. Jewelry insurance. Travel. Art purchases. Foundation consulting premiums. Personal stylist billed as donor engagement. Private medical concierge billed as executive wellness. All approved through Adrian's office. How much? Evelyn asked. Julia's voice was flat. Just over 31 million in direct or disguised benefits over 8 months, including the necklace. For a moment, no one spoke. 31 million was not enough to bankrupt Vail International. But it was enough to prove Adrian had lost any right to claim discipline. Evelyn turned a page and found a photo from the gala attached to the insurance file. Camille smiling beneath the diamonds. Adrian's hand at her neck. Julia said gently, You do not have to decide today. Evelyn looked at her friend. Julia meant it kindly. That was why the sentence bothered her. Women were always offered delay when men had already spent years acting. Wait until you are calmer. Wait until the scandal fades. Wait until the baby is born, the merger closes, the market improves, the mother-in-law softens, the husband apologizes, the mistress leaves. Wait until the damage becomes old enough to be called complicated. Evelyn was finished waiting. Adrian once told me an empire is only real if it can survive its ruler, she said. Rowan watched her. Can Vail survive him? She looked at the chart again. Ports, hotels, logistics, people, salaries, communities, obligations. Yes, she said, but not under him. Rowan nodded once. Then we proceed? Evelyn signed the authorization page. Her hand did not shake. Proceed. Chapter 6. Celeste Vail arrived at Vail Tower, as if entering a church that had forgotten her reserved pew. She wore dove-gray silk, pearls, and anger refined by generations of people who believed consequences were for staff. Behind her came Adrian's younger brother, Julian, a man of 40 who had built an entire identity around being less responsible than his siblings. He looked nervous, which meant someone had explained numbers to him. Adrian met them in his private dining room. Mother, he said. Do not mother me in that tone. Celeste removed her gloves and placed them on the table. What have you done? Adrian glanced at Julian. You told her? Julian lifted both hands. The board called me. North Star called everyone. The share price is already moving. Celeste's eyes narrowed. Is it true? It is a financing dispute. Did you buy Camille Laurent a $12 million necklace using restricted company funds? Adrian walked to the window. The source was temporary. Celeste closed her eyes. Adrian. He turned. Do not pretend moral horror. You encouraged the relationship. I encouraged you to find warmth, not commit accounting suicide. Julian sank into a chair. Can Evelyn stop it? Adrian looked at him sharply. Celeste did too. Julian swallowed. What? She always stops things. The sentence changed the room. Adrian hated it, because it was true. Celeste hated it because it acknowledged dependence. Julian looked as if he wished he could swallow the words back. Adrian said, "Evelyn is angry. She will posture. Then she will negotiate." Celeste studied her son. "You humiliated her in public. She has humiliated me privately for years. By being competent?" The question was quiet, and that made Adrian flinch. Celeste was cruel, proud, and class-obsessed, but she was not stupid. She knew exactly how often Evelyn had steadied the empire. She simply preferred not to name it, because naming debts made them harder to ignore. Adrian poured whiskey, though it was not yet noon. "She owes this family loyalty." Julian laughed once before realizing no one else found it funny. Adrian stared at him. Julian looked down. "Sorry." Celeste sat. "You will apologize to Evelyn." Adrian's jaw tightened. "No. You will return the necklace." "No. You will end whatever public spectacle you are creating with Camille." His eyes flashed. "You do not command me. Someone should have." Silence. Adrian gripped the edge of the sideboard. "I will not crawl back to my wife because a lender sent a threatening letter." Celeste stood, pearls trembling faintly at her throat. "Then crawl to the board before they remove you." "They cannot remove me." Julian looked up. Actually, with North Star conversion, they might. Adrian turned on him. "Stop speaking." A knock came at the door. His assistant entered, face pale. "Mr. Vale, the emergency board session has been moved to 5 p.m. Mrs. Vale has been invited." Adrian looked at the clock. Celeste whispered. Evelyn moved fast. Adrian's mouth hardened. "Then we move faster." Chapter 7. Camille arrived at the tower at 3 despite Adrian's instruction to stay away. She wore a cream coat, oversized sunglasses, and the diamond necklace hidden beneath a silk scarf. The lobby guards hesitated when they saw her. Yesterday, they would have rushed to escort her upstairs. Today, they looked at their screens and asked her to wait. That was when Camille understood the weather had changed. She removed her sunglasses slowly. "I am here to see Mr. Vale." The senior guard looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Vale is in meetings. He is expecting me." He was not. She knew that, and he knew that, and the humiliation burned. Before the guard could answer, Evelyn crossed the lobby with Julia at her side. Camille saw her and straightened instinctively. Evelyn wore an ivory suit beneath a camel coat, simple gold earrings, no visible diamonds. She looked neither wounded nor victorious. She looked busy. That was somehow worse. "Evelyn," Camille said. Evelyn stopped. "Camille." The guard looked relieved to no longer own the problem. Camille touched her scarf. "I wanted to speak with Adrian." "That may be difficult." "Because of you?" Julia's eyebrows lifted. Evelyn's expression did not change. "Because of Adrian." Camille stepped closer. "You think you are better than me." Evelyn looked at her for a moment, as if deciding whether the sentence deserved oxygen. "No, you do. You stand there with that frozen face, acting like I am some cheap little mistake. $12 million is not cheap." Camille flushed. A few people in the lobby slowed down. Not enough to be obvious. Enough to listen. Camille lowered her voice. "Adrian loves me." "Perhaps." That answer disturbed her more than denial. "He does," Camille insisted. "He said your marriage became a business arrangement years ago." Evelyn glanced toward the elevator bank. "He says many convenient things. You never made him happy." Something moved across Evelyn's eyes then. Not pain exactly. A memory passing behind a closed window. "Happiness is not a service wives provide while husbands misappropriate funds," she said. Camille's face tightened. "I did not misappropriate anything. You accepted the apartment, the travel, the stylist, the medical concierge, and the necklace. Those were gifts. Then you should ask why the company paid for them." Camille went still. The scarf at her throat suddenly looked heavy. Evelyn's voice softened just slightly. "You may want your own lawyer. I have Adrian. That is why I suggested a lawyer." Camille's mouth parted. For the first time, the younger woman looked less like an enemy, and more like someone standing at the edge of a hole she had helped decorate. The executive elevator opened behind Evelyn. Adrian stepped out with 2 attorneys. His eyes went from Evelyn to Camille, then to the gathered staff pretending not to watch. "Camille," he said tightly, "I told you to stay home." Camille's face crumpled for half a second before pride caught it. "Home." Evelyn noticed the word. Adrian did too. "Upstairs," he corrected. Camille touched the scarf. "What is happening?" Adrian ignored the question and looked at Evelyn. "This is enough." Evelyn said, "We agree on something." His attorneys looked miserable. Adrian stepped closer. "Come with me." No. Evelyn, your board meets in 90 minutes. Save your commands for the minutes. He lowered his voice. If you go through with this, every private thing in our marriage becomes public. Evelyn met his eyes. You made the private public when you fastened diamonds on your mistress in front of donors. Camille flinched at the word mistress. Adrian's face hardened. You will regret making me your enemy. Evelyn held his gaze. Adrian, she said, you became my enemy while I was still behaving like your wife. Then she walked into the elevator. Julia followed, smiling faintly at no one. The doors closed on Adrian's reflection. Chapter 8. The boardroom at Vale International was built to flatter kings. It sat on the 60th floor with black marble walls, a table long enough to host a peace treaty, and a skyline view that made even debt look majestic. Adrian had always loved the room. He liked standing at the head of the table with the city beneath him. At 5 p.m., he did not stand. The directors were already seated. Celeste occupied an observer chair near the wall. Julian sat beside her, pale. Martin Kessler arranged papers with trembling precision. Rowan Pierce attended as North Star's representative. Evelyn sat across from Adrian, her tablet closed before her. Camille was not invited. That absence did more to clarify her status than any insult could have. The independent chair, Helena Ward, opened the meeting. We are here to address the covenant breach notice issued by North Star Meridian, the unauthorized reserve transfer, and related governance concerns. Adrian leaned back. Before we begin, I want to register my objection to Evelyn's presence. She is my spouse and is acting out of personal anger. Evelyn did not look at him. Helena turned to Rowan. Mr. Pierce? Rowan opened a folder. Mrs. Vale is present as beneficial controller of Larkspur Holdings, a principal participant in North Star Meridian and holder of certain rights tied to the rescue financing agreement. The room went silent. Adrian looked at Rowan, then at Evelyn. For a moment, he seemed not to understand the language. Celeste gripped the arm of her chair. Julian whispered, What? Helena removed her glasses. For clarity, Mr. Pierce, you are saying Mrs. Vale controls Larkspur Holdings? Yes. And Larkspur is a principal backer of the North Star rescue financing? Correct. Martin Kessler looked as if several years of unexplained miracles had just been invoiced. Adrian's face went white, then red. That is impossible, he said. Evelyn finally looked at him. No. It was private. You hid this from me. You did not read what you signed. His hand struck the table. You deceived me. Helena said sharply, Adrian. He ignored her. All these years. You let me think North Star was external. It was external to your control. You sat in my house and held a knife to my company. Evelyn's voice remained even. I sat in our home and kept your company alive. The sentence moved through the room like a verdict. Celeste closed her eyes. Rowan continued before emotion could become theater. The breach concerns a $12 million transfer from the Marseille Restricted Reserve to fund a diamond necklace for Ms. Camille Laurent. Subsequent review has identified additional company-funded benefits totaling approximately $31 million. Martin cleared his throat. Finance confirms the preliminary figures. Adrian turned on him. You confirm nothing until I instruct you. Martin's face tightened. I am confirming company records. Helena leaned forward. Adrian, did you authorize the transfer? He looked around the table. There were no allies, only witnesses. It was temporary, he said. Did you authorize it? Yes. Helena's expression hardened. For a personal gift? Adrian's jaw worked. For a foundation recognition gift tied to donor strategy. Evelyn tapped her tablet once. The boardroom screen lit up with a photograph from the gala. Adrian fastening the necklace on Camille. Camille looking at Evelyn. Under it appeared the insurance description. Personal diamond necklace, registered to Camille Laurent, insured through Vale Executive Benefit Account. No one spoke. Evelyn said, if the board wishes to call that donor strategy, it should do so in writing. No one volunteered. Adrian leaned toward her. You planned this? No. I prepared for it. He laughed harshly. For years, I prepared for the possibility that you would confuse the company with yourself. Rowan placed another document on the table. North Star is prepared to declare formal breach and activate conversion rights. However, there is an alternative. Adrian looked at him with open hatred. Of course there is. Rowan ignored the tone. Hawthorne Global Infrastructure has submitted a conditional acquisition proposal for Vale International's core operating assets. The offer includes debt settlement, protection of employee contracts for 24 months, and a shareholder premium above current trading value. Conditions include immediate governance reset and removal of conflicted leadership. Celeste stood. Sale. Helena looked at Rowan. You're proposing we sell the empire. Evelyn answered. I am proposing you save what Adrian has not yet damaged. Adrian stared at her. You would sell my company, he said. Your grandfather's company, Evelyn corrected. Your father's burden. Your employee's livelihood. Your shareholder's asset. Not your jewelry account. His face twisted. You vindictive little lawyer. The insult revealed more than he intended. Helena's mouth tightened. Julian looked at the table. Celeste looked suddenly old. Evelyn did not flinch. That little lawyer wrote the rescue terms you survived on, she said. Chapter 9. The vote did not happen that night. Boards like to pretend they govern through reflection, even when fear had already made the decision. They formed a special committee, retained independent counsel, and suspended Adrian's unilateral authority over restricted reserves. North Star agreed not to trigger formal conversion for 72 hours while the sale proposal was reviewed. Adrian called it an ambush. The market called it uncertainty. Employees called it Monday. By sunrise, Vale Tower was surrounded by reporters. Adrian left through the private garage. Evelyn entered through the front doors. That was not an accident. She wore navy, carried a leather folder, and walked past cameras without stopping. Reporters shouted her name. Mrs. Vale, did your husband misuse company funds? Are you forcing a sale? Is Camille Laurent still employed? Are you divorcing Adrian Vale? Evelyn did not answer. Inside the lobby, employees looked at her differently. Some with curiosity, some with gratitude, some with fear. Power rarely became visible without making a room uncomfortable. Julia met her near security. Camille resigned from the foundation. Voluntarily? With counsel. Good. She also returned the necklace. Evelyn paused. To Adrian? To the company legal department. That surprised her. Not enough to soften the situation, but enough to be noted. Upstairs, Adrian's office had become a war room. His attorneys demanded time. His bankers searched for alternative financing. Celeste called old family allies who expressed sympathy and avoided commitments. Julian asked whether his trust distributions were at risk and was told to stop speaking. At noon, Adrian appeared at Evelyn's temporary office without knocking. Julia stood from the sofa. Should I stay? Evelyn looked at Adrian. No. He will behave. Adrian's smile was thin. Will I? Julia did not move. Evelyn nodded once. Only then did Julia leave, closing the door behind her. Adrian remained near the entrance, as if stepping farther inside would concede territory. You made me look like a fool, he said. You made it easy. Do you know what people are saying? Many things, I imagine. That my wife secretly controlled my lender. That I bought jewelry with restricted funds. That a mistress cost me my empire. Evelyn looked at him. Which part is false? His eyes flashed. Then unexpectedly he laughed. It sounded tired. I forgot how merciless you can be. No. You forgot who benefited from my mercy. He walked to the window, looking out over the city. Did you ever love me? The question came so suddenly that it might have worked years ago. Evelyn closed the file before her. Yes. He turned. The answer hurt him more than denial would have. Then how can you do this? Because I loved you. Not the throne you confused with yourself. Adrian's face tightened. You think selling Vale is justice? I think selling it is containment. Of me. Of the damage. He looked away. Camille was not supposed to become public. Evelyn almost laughed. You fastened $12 million around her neck under chandeliers. I wanted you to react. I know. The admission stripped the room. Adrian rubbed a hand over his face. You had become unreachable. I had become tired. You stopped looking at me like I mattered. Evelyn stared at him, not with anger now, but with the exhausted disbelief reserved for men who burn down a house because the lamp was dim. Adrian, she said, I spent years keeping your company alive, your lenders calm, your mother managed, your brother paid, your board confident, your mistakes quiet, and your name clean. If that did not make you feel you mattered, a mistress was never going to solve it. He had no answer. For a moment, the silence almost resembled grief. Then his pride returned. If you sell the company, I will contest everything. I will expose your hidden ownership. I will argue fraud, marital deception, conflict of interest. You should. He blinked. Evelyn opened another folder. My disclosures to North Star, Larkspur, and independent counsel are complete. My marital status was known to the consortium. My beneficial ownership was not disclosed to you because you were not entitled to private trust details unrelated to your voting control. The rescue terms were reviewed by your lawyers. His mouth tightened. As for marital deception, she continued, I suggest caution. Discovery will include Camille's apartment, her benefits, your messages, the jewelry purchase, and your attempts to classify personal gifts as corporate expenses. Adrian stared at her. The fight drained from his face by inches. You built a cage, he said. Evelyn stood. No. I built an exit. You walked us both toward the cage and called it freedom. She moved toward the door, then paused. The sale will preserve jobs and shareholder value. You can oppose it, but do not pretend you are defending anyone except yourself. He looked at her. And us. The word landed quietly. Us. Once it had meant warmth. A hotel balcony in Lisbon. 2 wine glasses on a rainy night. Adrian asleep with his head in her lap after his father's funeral. Evelyn laughing barefoot in a kitchen before the Empire learned how to enter every room. Now the word arrived too late, carrying diamonds around another woman's neck. There is no us in a room where I have to audit your apologies, she said. Then she left. Chapter 10. Camille returned the necklace in person because her lawyer told her it would look better. She arrived at Vale Legal in a plain black dress, hair pulled back, face pale beneath careful makeup. Without the diamonds, she looked younger and far less certain. She signed 3 forms acknowledging that the necklace had been received as a personal gift from Adrian and that she had not been informed of the funding source. That last part was only partly true. Camille had not known the exact account. She had known enough to avoid asking. When the legal associate asked whether she would provide relevant messages, Camille hesitated. Then she said yes. The messages were worse than Evelyn expected. Adrian, Evelyn will not move. She cares too much about the company. Camille, what if she makes trouble? Adrian, she knows better. Her whole identity is being composed. Camille, I want people to know I am not just hidden. Adrian, after the gala they will. Camille, and the necklace? Adrian, consider it a preview of what life looks like when you stop apologizing for wanting. Camille, will she be there? Adrian, yes. Camille, good. Evelyn read that line twice. Good. There was no misunderstanding in that word. No inocencia. No manipulation strong enough to erase pleasure in another woman's humiliation. Julia watched her from across the table. Do you want to use it publicly? Only if Adrian contests intent. Camille is cooperating. That does not make her honorable. No. Evelyn closed the file. It makes her useful. That afternoon, Camille requested a private meeting. Evelyn almost refused, then agreed to 10 minutes in a glass conference room with Julia present. Camille entered without the old perfume cloud, without the jewelry, without the scarlet confidence. She sat opposite Evelyn and folded her hands so tightly her knuckles whitened. Thank you for seeing me, she said. Evelyn waited. Camille swallowed. I did not know about the restricted funds. I believe you did not know the account name. The correction landed. Camille's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. Adrian told me you were cruel, she said. That was convenient for both of you. Camille flinched. Yes. The admission was small but real. He said you did not love him, that you treated him like a project. Evelyn looked through the glass wall at employees moving past with files, badges, coffee cups, entire ordinary lives affected by Adrian's need to feel adored. I did treat him like a project sometimes, she said. That was my mistake. People are not restored by being managed. Camille stared at her, startled by the honesty. Evelyn turned back. But that did not make him yours to take. Camille's tears finally slipped. I know. Do you? I wanted to be chosen. Her voice broke. I grew up watching women like you enter rooms like they had keys to the world. I thought if Adrian chose me in front of everyone, I would finally become one of them. Julia's expression did not soften. Evelyn's did, but only slightly. A man cannot choose you into worth, Evelyn said. Camille looked down. I understand that now. No. Now you are embarrassed. Understanding comes later, if you let it. Camille nodded, crying silently. Evelyn slid a card across the table. This is an independent attorney who handles employment separation and cooperation agreements. She does not work for me. Tell her the truth before you tell anyone else another useful lie. Camille took the card. Why help me? I am not helping you. I am limiting Adrian's ability to use you again. Camille looked at her with something like shame. I am sorry. Evelyn did not offer forgiveness. She had learned that people often asked for forgiveness when what they really wanted was relief from the sight of themselves. Then become someone who would not enjoy that photograph, she said. Camille nodded once and left. Julia waited until the door closed. That was generous. No, it was efficient. Evelyn. She sighed. Fine. It was a little generous. Julia smiled faintly. Careful. You might be human. Do not spread rumors. Chapter 11. The special committee recommended the sale within 72 hours. Not because they liked Evelyn. Not because they disliked Adrian. Boards did not need emotion when liability sat on the table, wearing a tuxedo. Hawthorne Global Infrastructure's offer was clean. It preserved employee contracts. It paid down dangerous debt. It offered shareholders a premium. It removed the risk of North Star conversion litigation. Most importantly, it gave directors a defensible answer to one terrifying question. Why did you leave Adrian Vale in control after knowing what he did? The shareholder meeting was scheduled for the following week. Adrian fought until the morning of the vote. He called investors. He promised alternative financing. He claimed Evelyn had engineered a marital coup. He leaked that Larkspur Holdings had secretly backed North Star, expecting outrage. Instead, analysts praised the sophistication of the rescue structure and questioned why Adrian had not understood his own agreements. That wounded him most. Not the affair. Not the necklace. Not even the sale. The public realization that he had been less informed than his wife. At midnight before the vote, Adrian came to the apartment. Evelyn had moved into the guest suite 3 days earlier, while her new residence was prepared. She heard him enter the main living room and waited. When he knocked on her door, she opened it with her phone already recording. He noticed. Is that necessary? Yes. He laughed quietly. We really are dead. Evelyn said nothing. Adrian looked around the guest suite. It held one suitcase, a stack of documents, and none of the life they had built. His expression shifted. I remember when we bought this apartment, he said. You remember when the broker said the windows made you look powerful? He almost smiled. You hated him. He described the pantry as sensual. This time Adrian did smile, but it did not last. Evelyn, he said, do not sell tomorrow. There it was. No command. No threat. Just a request, stripped late of its armor. She leaned against the doorframe. Why? Because I do not know who I am without Vale. The honesty moved through her like a cold draft. For years, she had thought that if Adrian ever told the truth plainly, it would heal something. Now she understood truth could arrive too late to repair what lies had used up. That is not a reason to keep it, she said. His eyes reddened. It was my father's, and you used it to buy your mistress diamonds. He looked down. I know, he whispered. Silence stretched between them. Then he said, I wanted you to fight for me. Evelyn's throat tightened despite herself. I did, she said. You mistook it for administration. His face folded, just slightly. She continued, quieter now. I fought banks for you. I fought creditors. I fought your board when they wanted you removed after the Singapore losses. I fought your mother when she called you reckless behind your back. I fought your own despair after your father died. Then one day you decided the woman fighting beside you was the enemy because she had seen too much. Adrian closed his eyes. I am sorry, he said. The words were small. They were also late. Evelyn let them exist without reaching for them. I believe you, she said. He opened his eyes, hope breaking through. She finished. And I am still voting to sell. The hope died. Then there is nothing left. There is responsibility. He gave a bitter laugh. You sound like my father. Someone had to. He looked at her for a long time. Did I ever deserve you? Evelyn thought of a younger Adrian, frightened and brilliant, and not yet cruel. She thought of the man who danced with her barefoot after signing their first apartment lease. She thought of the husband who had once asked for help without resenting the hand that saved him. Sometimes, she said. That answer hurt them both because it was true. Adrian nodded slowly. Then he turned and left. Chapter 12. The shareholder vote took place in the old Grand Meridian Hotel, one of Vale International's first trophy assets. Adrian had chosen the ballroom years earlier for annual meetings because it made shareholders feel like inheritors of something grand. Gold ceiling, marble columns, velvet chairs, portraits of dead men who looked proud of assets they never had to audit. Now the room was filled with investors, directors, lawyers, reporters, employees, and enough security to make even Celeste behave. Evelyn entered through the side doors with Rowan and Julia. She wore a black suit, not mourning exactly, but close enough for anyone who understood symbolism. Her hair was swept back. Her face was calm. The cameras turned toward her first. Adrian noticed. He stood near the stage in a dark suit, looking handsome and ruined. Celeste sat in the front row, spine straight, face powdered into dignity. Julian checked his phone compulsively. Camille was absent again, but her shadow hung over the ballroom in the form of every headline not saying her name. Helena Ward opened the meeting. The terms were presented. Hawthorne's offer. North Star's position. The special committee's recommendation. The debt implications. Employee protections. Shareholder premium. Adrian requested time to speak. No one looked surprised. He walked to the podium, paused, and looked across the room until his eyes found Evelyn. Vale International is not merely a balance sheet, he began. It is a family legacy, a living institution, a promise made by my grandfather, carried by my father, and entrusted to me. His voice was steady. He was good. Evelyn had always known he was good in front of a room. That was one of the reasons she had loved him, before she understood performance could become a cage. Recent events have created noise, Adrian continued. I accept responsibility for errors in judgment, but selling this company under pressure from a conflicted financing party would be a surrender of everything Vale stands for. Several shareholders shifted. A few nodded. Then Adrian made his final mistake. He looked directly at Evelyn. I ask you not to let a private marital grievance determine the fate of a public company. The room tightened with appetite. Reporters leaned forward. Evelyn rose. Helena said, Mrs. Vale? I would like to respond. She walked to the second microphone. Adrian watched her approach with the wary expression of a man who had thrown a match and finally noticed the gasoline. Evelyn looked out at the shareholders. Adrian is right about one thing, she said. Vale International is not merely a balance sheet. The room quieted. It is thousands of employees. It is pension exposure. It is ports that move medicine and food. It is hotels staffed by people whose names do not appear in society pages. It is logistics contracts, debt covenants, vendor obligations, city agreements, and families who do not care whether their CEO feels admired. Adrian's face hardened. Evelyn continued, This sale is not recommended because my marriage failed. My marriage failed because the same arrogance that endangered this company entered my home and called it self-love. A murmur passed through the ballroom. The restricted reserve was not moved by a jealous wife. It was moved by Adrian Vale. The necklace was not fastened by a rumor. It was fastened by Adrian Vale. The benefits, apartment, travel, and concealment were not created by gossip. They were approved through his office. She turned slightly toward him. If a man cannot separate an empire from his appetite, the empire deserves another steward. The sentence landed like a gavel. Adrian stared at her, his public face breaking at the edges. Celeste looked down. Evelyn faced the room again. Larkspur Holdings and North Star Meridian support the Hawthorne acquisition because it protects value, jobs, and obligations. I support it because saving an institution sometimes means removing the person who believes he is the institution. No one spoke. Then an employee near the back began to clap. One clap became 10. 10 became a wave. Not everyone joined, but enough did to make the room impossible to control. Adrian stepped back from the podium. The vote proceeded. The sale passed. Vale International, the empire Adrian had used as identity, shield, weapon, and seduction, would be sold. Not destroyed. Transferred. Preserved beyond him. When the result appeared on the screen, Adrian did not move. His face emptied, and for a moment Evelyn felt the ghost of pity. Then she remembered the necklace against Camille's throat, the public smile, the warning not to make a scene. She had not made a scene. She had made a transaction. Chapter 13. The divorce settlement was quieter than the sale. That was Evelyn's preference. Adrian kept personal assets not tied to misconduct. Evelyn kept what had always been hers. Vale Towers' penthouse was sold. The Hamptons estate went to a buyer who collected houses and never asked why the master suite had 2 separate dressing rooms. Celeste moved into a smaller residence and told friends she preferred simplicity, though no one believed her. Camille left New York. 6 months later, Evelyn received a letter with no return address. It was from Camille. I thought being chosen by him would make me real. It made me smaller. I am sorry I enjoyed hurting you. I know you do not owe me forgiveness. I only wanted to say I am trying to become someone who would never stand under those chandeliers again. Evelyn read the letter once, then placed it in a drawer. She did not answer. Not every apology required a reply. Adrian moved to London for a while, then Singapore. He attempted to launch a private investment firm. Investors listened politely and asked too many questions about governance. His name still opened doors, but now those doors had lawyers behind them. 1 year after the sale, Evelyn stood on the roof terrace of the first hospital wing funded by the restructured Vail Foundation. Not Adrian's foundation anymore. The foundation had been renamed the Henry and Larkspur Children's Health Trust after a board vote Evelyn did not attend, but did not oppose. The new wing had clean white walls, sunlight, and no donor wall large enough for ego. Children painted paper stars in the activity room. Nurses moved with the efficient kindness of people who did work no gala speech could capture. Julia stood beside Evelyn with 2 paper cups of coffee. For the record, Julia said, hospital coffee remains a crime. Evelyn accepted a cup. Document it. Already did. They stood in silence for a while, watching a little boy in a yellow sweater press both hands against the glass to look at the city. Rowan joined them near the railing. Hawthorne completed the final integration. Employee retention numbers are better than projected. Good, Evelyn said. Marseille acquisition closed too. She looked at him. Under Hawthorne? Yes. With the reserve properly used this time. Julia lifted her coffee. To jewelry-free port strategy. Evelyn smiled. Rowan studied her. Do you miss it? The Empire? The fight. Evelyn looked over the terrace at the city. Somewhere below, people were buying things, losing things, lying, apologizing, rebuilding. The world did not pause for any woman's heartbreak, which had once seemed cruel and now seemed merciful. No, she said. I miss who I was before I believed love required constant rescue. Rowan nodded, understanding enough not to answer too quickly. Julia touched Evelyn's arm. And now? Evelyn looked through the glass at the children painting stars. Now I would like to build things no one has to be humiliated to save. Chapter 14. Adrian asked to meet her once more in late autumn. Evelyn almost refused. Then she saw the location he suggested. A small public garden near the East River, nowhere expensive, nowhere symbolic, nowhere he could perform power. Curiosity was not forgiveness, but it was enough for 20 minutes. He was waiting on a bench when she arrived. He looked older, still handsome, but less polished, as if the world had finally touched him without gloves. He stood when he saw her. Thank you for coming, he said. Evelyn kept her coat buttoned against the cold. You said it was important. It is. They walked slowly along the path. Fallen leaves scattered underfoot. No reporters. No chandeliers. No diamonds. Adrian spoke first. I sold the remaining personal stake. I heard. Of course you did. There was no bitterness in it. Only fact. He stopped near the railing. I wanted to tell you I am entering a governance program in London. Executive rehabilitation, ethics, leadership after removal. It sounds like punishment with better stationery. Evelyn almost smiled. Accurate. I probably deserve worse. She looked at him. Probably. He nodded, accepting it. I am not asking for anything. I know better now. Or I am learning to. The river moved gray beneath the sky. Adrian continued. When you sold Vail, I thought you took everything from me. I hated you for that. Then I realized I had been calling borrowed things mine for so long that loss felt like theft. Evelyn said nothing. The company. Your mind. Your patience. Even Camille's admiration. I treated all of it as property. It was a decent sentence. Late, but decent. Why tell me, she asked. Because I owe you at least one truth without trying to use it. She looked at him carefully. He seemed sincere. But sincerity was not a bridge by itself. It was only one plank, and Evelyn no longer crossed rivers on one plank. Thank you, she said. He swallowed. Do you forgive me? There it was. The human hunger to be released. Evelyn looked at the water, then back at the man who had once been her husband, her project, her love, her wound, and finally her case file. Some days, she said. Not because you earned it. Because I do not want to carry you every day. His eyes reddened. That is more than I expected. It is less than you want. Yes. Learn to live with less. He laughed softly, painfully. You always did know how to end a conversation. I learned from contracts. For the first time in a long while, his smile did not look like strategy. They walked back to the garden gate. Before leaving, Adrian said, The necklace was returned, wasn't it? Yes. What happened to it? Evelyn's eyes warmed slightly. It was sold. He looked at her. Of course it was, he said. The proceeds funded the pediatric oncology art rooms. For a moment, Adrian closed his eyes. Whether from shame or relief, she could not tell. Perhaps both. Good, he said. Evelyn nodded and turned to leave. Evelyn, he called. She paused. You were never cold. The words reached her gently, far too late to matter and not too late to be true. She looked back. I know. Then she walked away. Chapter 15. 2 years after the gala, Evelyn attended another charity event under another chandelier. This one was smaller. No society photographers at the entrance. No mistress in scarlet. No husband waiting to test the limits of her dignity. The room belonged to the Children's Health Trust, and the guests were doctors, donors, social workers, teachers, and a few former Vale employees who had become trustees. Evelyn wore a dark green dress and her father's watch. Not diamonds. During the program, a young doctor described how the new wing had changed treatment access for families who once traveled hours for specialized care. A nurse spoke about children painting on difficult days. A mother stood at the microphone and cried while thanking people she would never know for giving her son more time. Evelyn listened from the side of the room. Julia stood beside her. You okay? Evelyn nodded. Yes. That sounded real. It was. Julia smiled. Progress. At the end of the evening, the auctioneer announced the final item. Not jewelry. A set of architectural drawings from the restored hospital wing, signed by the design team and framed with a plaque honoring the workers who built it. The bidding rose quickly. Evelyn watched people compete not for ownership of beauty, but for participation in something useful. The distinction pleased her. When the auction ended, she stepped onto the terrace for air. The city shimmered beyond the glass. Somewhere, towers carried names that would one day be sold, renamed, renovated, forgotten. Empires looked permanent only from inside them. Marianne Ashford, Evelyn's mother, called just after 10. I saw the photographs, Marianne said. Which photographs? The event. You look happier. Evelyn leaned against the railing. Dangerous accusation. I stand by it. For a moment, Evelyn heard her childhood kitchen in her mother's voice, the old world before Adrian, before Vale, before she learned how easily love could become unpaid labor if a woman did not price her own peace. Marianne said, Your father would be proud. Evelyn looked down at her watch. Because I sold an empire? Because you knew the difference between destroying one and setting it free from a foolish king. Evelyn smiled faintly. He would have said that with fewer words. Your father never used fewer words when he could be dramatic. That made Evelyn laugh. After the call, she remained on the terrace a little longer. She thought of the gala 2 years earlier. The chandelier light. Camille's scarlet dress. Adrian's hand at the necklace clasp. The room waiting for Evelyn to shatter, so everyone could call the broken glass evidence of instability. She had not shattered, but she had broken something. The habit of making herself responsible for a man's hunger. The belief that dignity meant absorbing humiliation quietly. The old reflex to save the house because she remembered when it had been a home. In its place, she built a life with fewer performances and stronger locks. She still liked quiet, but now her quiet had doors, records, counsel, and consequences. When Evelyn returned to the ballroom, the final donation total appeared on the screen. Applause rose around her, warm and real. Julia handed her a glass of sparkling water. To the necklace, Julia said. Evelyn looked toward the activity room photographs projected behind the stage, children smiling beneath painted stars. No, she said. To what replaced it? They touched glasses. For years, Adrian Vale had believed Evelyn was the elegant shadow beside his empire. He never understood shadows. They appear only where there is light. And when Evelyn finally stepped out of his, the whole empire learned who had been holding the lamp. Subscribe for more stories about betrayal, hidden power, and the quiet moment a woman takes everything back.